I wish the harem would unionize, honestly, but at this point, but you know, he's quite the union buster.
It's official. Elon Musk is the first ever trillionaire.
The world officially crowned its very first trillionaire.
The world's first trillionaire.
If Elon Musk becomes the first trillionaire in the world, that would mean that if he were to give $1 billion to every individual he met on the street, he'd need to meet 1,000 people before he ran out of money. I'm using a metaphor to help you understand how much money that is, but do any of us even comprehend what a billion actually is? Musk's fortune is effectively infinite, but his life isn't, at least for now. And let's be honest, we all want to know who's gonna get that bag of money. I want to know. If you clicked on the video, you probably want to know too, but I have to say something. This is smart girly territory here. That means that we do engage in some drama every now and then, but we do so in the pursuit of knowledge. I've wanted to talk about inheritance, family economics for a long time now, guys, and this is, to me, the perfect opportunity. Because tech billionaires and now trillionaires are so uncomfortable with that topic. I mean, they spend their whole life convincing us that they are self-made, you know? They seek legitimacy through meritocratic discourse, and inheritance is the opposite of that. You can't brag about inheritance. I mean, have you ever seen a Nepo baby brag about nepotism? No, they do the opposite. In fact, Elon Musk himself has said that he's not a big fan of inheritance. He believes that leadership should go to people who do the work rather than people who are connected through bloodlines. Musk has also repeatedly denied that he's inherited any significant amount of money. Now, having read his mother's book, May Musk, and accounts from earlier girlfriends, it is clear that Elon Musk had the confidence and the aura of a rich kid. His first wife, Justin, whom he met in college, described him as a, quote, clean-cut upper-class boy with a South African accent. Elon Musk was born in a relatively affluent family in Pretoria. His father, Elon Musk, was an engineer and businessman, while his mother, May Musk, worked as a model and dietitian. After their divorce, May raised the kids as a single mother and has spoken about financial struggles and working multiple jobs to support the family. At the same time, Musk benefited from advantages associated with an educated, well-off background, including good schooling and early access to computers. He also received significant financial help from his parents. His dad, Elon Musk, gave up to $28,000 to Elon and his brother Kimball for the startup that became Zip2. He also provided 10% of a later funding run. His mother, on the other hand, helped him with $10,000. That's $38,000 plus 10% of a later funding. $38,000 back then in 1995 equals to more or less $80,000 today, so that is a pretty significant amount of money. From that point onward, journalists and commentators tend to tell the story of entrepreneur Elon as a succession of business acquisitions and negotiations, as if that were the only way to understand who he is and how he became so rich. Today, I want to tell a different story. I want to tell the story of Elon Musk, not through his businesses, but through his relationships, through his exes, and imagine what might happen once he leaves the Earth, the solar system, the entire galaxy. My name's Alice, welcome back to my channel. I feel like when people talk about Elon Musk's first marriage, they usually assume that the people around him knew what was coming, but when Justin got back together with Elon in the 1990s, he was a startup founder sharing an apartment with roommates in Silicon Valley and trying to make Zip2 work. There was no empire yet, just a guy with big ambitions and a lot of confidence. In her Marie Claire essay, Justine writes about how they drifted apart after university. She spent a year teaching English in Japan, returned to Canada, and found herself thinking about him again. If Elon ever calls me again, I think I'll go for it. She remembers telling her sister, quote, I might have missed something there. A week later, he called. They met again, started dating, and eventually married. Justine wasn't showing up after success. At that stage, Elon Musk didn't have much status, much wealth, but she thought that he had potential. When Elon asked how many kids she wanted, she said 1 or 2, maybe 4 if they had nannies, to which Elon replied, okay, let's pause here for a second. We'll get to his reply in a bit. I first want to talk to you guys about the sponsor of today's video, Saily. So I was invited to a conference in Lisbon the other week, and when I landed, I did the usual thing, turned off airplane mode, waited for signal, and nothing. No connection, no data, and after a few minutes I realized I basically had no reliable internet at all, which put me immediately into panic mode because I needed maps, messages, conference schedules, emails, everything. I was also trying to coordinate with people from the event, but after a few minutes I realized I basically had no reliable internet at all, which immediately put me into panic mode because I needed maps, messages, conference schedules, emails. I was also trying to coordinate with people from the event, and you really realize how dependent you are on data the second you lose it. We eventually figured it out, but the whole experience made me realize how useful something like Saily would have been in that situation. And you guessed it, Saily is the sponsor of today's video. Saily is an eSIM app that lets you set up mobile data before you travel, so when you land, you're already connected. No swapping physical SIM cards, no searching around airports for SIM vendors, and no expensive roaming charges. It works in over 200 destinations worldwide. The setup is really simple too. You just download the app, choose the country you're traveling to, pick a data plan, and activate everything directly from your phone before the trip. Then when you arrive, it's ready to go. Honestly, if you travel even just a few times a year, it just removes one of those annoying problems that always seem to happen at the worst possible time. So if you want to check it out, download Saily using the link below and use code ALICE at checkout to get 15% off your first data plan. Thank you, Saily, for sponsoring the video, and now let's go back to it. That's the difference between you and me. I just assumed there will be nannies. Tells you a lot about how Elon viewed the future. For him, success was inevitable. Of course, there would be nannies. There's a reason people like that sort of energy, this certainty, this availability. Justine fell deeper and deeper in love, and with love came trusts. An almost complete level of trust, which she would later look back on with regret. In fact, with the help of his advisors, Elon asked Justine to sign what he described as a financial agreement. Looking back, Justine admits that she didn't really understand the implications of this agreement, and she didn't even think it would matter. Years later, she wrote, "I trusted my husband. Why else had I married him? We were soulmates. We would never get divorced." That was a big mistake, one that women make quite often, and honestly, I don't want to, be too harsh about it. We're conditioned to be hopeless romantics, and when reality hits, it hits us hard. Most people don't stand at the altar expecting to need legal protection from the person they're marrying. You don't sign marriage papers while imagining future court battles, but you have to be prepared for everything. With the post-nup agreement, Justine basically gave up most of the rights she would have had with California community property law. This whole thing reminds me of the memoir that went viral, I think it was called Strangers, but it also reminds me of a book I read not too long ago, Stephanie Kant's How Love Conquered Marriage. One of her main arguments is that for most of human history, marriage wasn't about love, it was about an economic transaction. It was about property, inheritance, family alliances. The soulmate version of marriage is a rather recent invention, and it's a wonderful one. I think most of us would rather marry someone we love rather than someone who was chosen for us and we don't really like. But there's a downside too, because when love becomes the foundation of marriage, all the finance stuff, the money stuff, they start to feel a bit awkward. Justine's explanation for signing the postnup feels like a perfect example of that mindset. She was thinking like someone in love. Elon was thinking like someone protecting an asset. And over time, that difference became harder to ignore. There were warning signs. At their wedding reception, according to Justine, Elon told her, quote, "I am the alpha in this relationship." At that time, she laughed. As his companies grew, so did the imbalance between them. In her Marie Claire essay, she describes feeling less like an equal partner and more like someone whose role was gradually being defined for her. She once told Elon, quote, "I am your wife, not your employee." To which he replied, quote, "If you were my employee, I would fire you." Elon is famous for demanding extraordinary performance from his employees. Musk's close advisor, Jared Bershaw, explained that, quote, "His entire world is set up to be like a meritocracy. Benefits flow," he said, "when people do good work." The problem is that marriages are not companies, at least they're not supposed to be, and if they are, then your wife deserves a little bit of equity. After the post-nup agreement, Justine and Elon lost their first child and then turned to IVF. They had twins, including Vivian, and then triplets. Meanwhile, Musk companies continued to grow, and the life Justine had imagined for herself became increasingly distant. She said she basically became a trophy wife, but she wasn't really interested in that role. She wasn't interested in Botox, she didn't want to be the perfect hostess. Elon wanted her to go blonder, but she didn't want to. She didn't like the other businessmen's wives she was supposed to engage with, to entertain. And then came the divorce. This is where the post-nup agreement became useful. Reportedly, Justine asked for equity in both Tesla and SpaceX, rather than a big cash settlement, which was a smart and legitimate request. But because of the post-nup and the legal battles surrounding it, she didn't get any stakes. If she had, she'd be a billionaire right now. In a recent livestream with Hassan Biker, former right-wing influencer and mother of Elon Musk's 13th child, Ashley St. Clair, said this.
And then he tried to get me to use surrogates. He texted me and he's like, to reach legion level before the apocalypse, we need to use surrogates.
I was already well into research for this video when I saw this, and that comment made a lot of sense. It's difficult to know exactly how Musk's kids were born, but what's clear is that many of his partners use technology ranging from IVF to surrogacy to give birth.
And then he tried getting me to have a C-section, like elect to have a C-section.
Why?
Because he said, oh, it's better for the brain size.
From his first marriage until today, Elon Musk has developed a strong concern about depopulation. A father of 14 children, he has positioned himself as an example to follow and has encouraged other families to do the same. One of these families is the Collinses. Maybe you've heard of them. I have an old Patreon exclusive video on them. The Collinses, like Musk, are supporters of the pro-natalist movement. They have a large number of children and, according to some reports, don't always raise them particularly well. But that's not really the point in this context. What matters to them is the number of children. Like Musk, they also come from tech-adjacent circles rather than the typical trad family influencer space. However, the Collinses and Musk differ on one point. The Collinses prefer natural birth and they don't promote surrogacy, whereas Musk sees it as a necessary tool to reverse depopulation. So the strategy for him isn't really to find a partner and have a bunch of babies with them. The strategy is to find partners that are ideologically aligned with his tech-friendly pro-natalist views. Now enters Siobhan Zilis. If the choice is between an anonymous donor or doing it with the person you admire most in the world, for me it was pretty fucking easy decision. I can't possibly think of genes I would prefer more for my children. Siobhan Zilis met Elon Musk through the AI world, not through a personal introduction. She was working in venture capital and AI research, and their path first crossed through the early OpenAI ecosystem in the mid-2010s. She gradually became part of Musk's orbit, working more closely with him across several of his companies. Eventually, she joined Neuralink, the company that wants to put computer chips in your brain. Over time, the professional relationship became a personal one. Today, Musk and Zilis reportedly have 4 children together. All were born through IVF and carried by gestational surrogates. Zilis has said she originally expected Musk to be less involved as a parent than he turned out to be. The implication is that she entered this arrangement knowing that she would probably be in charge of most of the parenting while the pregnancies were outsourced. Let's be honest, this is a pretty convenient setup for Musk. He gets to champion pronatalism from conference stages to podcast studios without having to deal with pregnancy himself, or in many cases, the kind of hands-on parenting that usually comes with a large family. And to be honest, Musk doesn't have a great reputation as a father. His daughter Vivian Wilson has said he was largely absent throughout her childhood and that she and her siblings were mostly raised by their mother, Justine, and a team of nannies. She has described him as emotionally distant, harsh, and quick to anger. She's also said that he mocked and criticized her for being feminine when she was young. The two are now completely estranged. Vivian has not spoken to him for years, legally changed her name to cut ties with him, and has repeatedly criticized him in public interviews. At one point, she called him a pathetic man-child. More recently on Ass and Piker's livestream, Ashley Sinclair offered the streamer a sweater that says, quote, "I'm not the stepdad, I'm the dad that stepped up." It's obviously a joke about Musk's level of involvement as a father to her child. During a call with Musk's advisor Jared Burchell, Sinclair said that she had received outreach from a woman Musk had allegedly invited to have his baby. She described it as being caught up in Musk's harem drama. So yeah, again, the implication is that there are potentially a lot of Musk children. This is obviously part of Musk's plan to spread his genes as much as possible, but that also means that he's now tied to a lot of people who could potentially claim a little bit of that fortune. You know it already, inheritance can be claimed through bloodlines. It's a very old tool meant to keep wealth within the family, to pass it on from generation to generation. It's also part of what creates the growing wealth gap between the richest and the poorest. But inheritance does look a little bit different for people like Elon Musk and his other billionaires friends. Understanding that explains why he doesn't talk about inheritance that much. So let's unpack this, and we'll start with a video that you have probably already seen.
You're a billionaire. I'm like, that's net worth. I have negative money right now. I'm borrowing money. That's how little money I have. Technically, everyone watching this video has more money than me in their bank account if you subtract the equity value of my company, which doesn't buy me McDonald's in the morning.
What Mr. Beast is saying here is that he doesn't have a lot of money sitting in his personal bank account. His wealth is held in his company, stocks, or other assets. This strategy is used a lot by the rich to avoid paying taxes. They keep all the money in the company, they don't pay themselves so that they only pay corporation tax, and if they live in a place where corporation tax is low, or if they have multiple companies and can play with gains and losses, it is possible for them to pay barely any taxes. Now, I think you start to understand why throughout his relationships and marriages, Elon Musk has avoided giving any equity, any shares to his partners, because this is where most of his wealth is stored. This structure has benefited him and his companies so far. I haven't run the exact calculation, and you can do it actually, I'd be curious to know. But maybe if Justin managed to secure some stakes, if there wasn't that post-nup agreement, Elon Musk might not be a trillionaire. I'm not sure though, this is not fact-checked. So yeah, this structure is beneficial for him right now, but it is not optimized for legacy. You see, Musk owns large portions of the company he runs, 20% of Tesla and up to 40 to 45% of SpaceX. He also has a lot of voting power, 80 to 82% at SpaceX. Those stakes give him enormous control. But if he dies, that control does not disappear. It gets transferred in some form through inheritance structures to his heirs, who could then influence the direction of these companies for better or worse. Musk and many of his partners share a belief that his genes are particularly valuable and should be passed on as widely as possible. But in reality, many of his children may have no interest in taking over his companies. That includes Vivian, for example. If she were to inherit a portion of his shares and voting power, it raises an interesting question about what she would do with it, given her public estrangement from her father. Now, this scenario you see there is the exact sort of scenario that wealthy families try to avoid at all costs. But this is also the type of scenario that billionaires vulture love to see. In fact, this story makes me think of another recent story, one of the biggest business succession drama in Europe. I'm talking about one of the richest men in the world, who was actually the richest man in the world for a few months. He surpassed Elon Musk for... But anyway, Bernard Arnault is the guy behind LVMH, and he has some beef with Hermes, a company he wants to control. So let me tell you the story really quickly. It's insane, and I don't know, I want to project that onto Elon Musk's story. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, you tell me what you think about it. So Bernard Arnault already had significant wealth and wanted to expand his luxury empire. To him, Hermes was a strategic target, and this is what he did. At the time, one of the Hermes has held a large stake, but was reportedly not deeply involved in the company's operations and had entrusted much of his financial management to an advisor. Now, allegedly, because this is still ongoing, a portion of his shares was allegedly transferred or sold through intermediaries and eventually ended up in the hands of Bernard Arnault. The person allegedly responsible of this transfer was his financial manager, who somehow put an end to his life right after the investigation started. This case became one of the most famous corporate battles in modern European business. Bernard Arnault ultimately accumulated a large minority stake, around 23% in Hermes. Doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, it is pretty big. The Hermes family eventually noticed that something fishy was happening, and so they forced LVMH to get rid of those shares through a settlement. And listen to what LVMH did. LVMH and Bernard Arnault did as they were told, but guess what? They sold the shares to their own shareholders, most of them being members of the Bernard Arnault family. So basically a lot of those shares remain in the family. This is the kind of strategy that billionaires use to grow their empire. People often focus on big deals and IPOs and forget that a lot of this also comes from identifying family weaknesses, taking advantage of a business succession, and building trust through intermediaries. Musk, for his part, might be aware that such a scenario could happen to his family, to his legacy. After his son X was born, Musk told the New York Times in July 2020 that Grimes was taking the lead in parenting during the early stages. Quote, "Well, babies are just eating and pooping machines, you know, right now there's not much I can do. Grimes has a much bigger role than me right now. When the kids get older, there will be more of a role for me." It is true that Elon Musk has taken X to a bunch of high-profile meetings, etc., despite Grimes expressing discomfort with that visibility. But X is only one of many Musk children, some of whom don't really care about his companies and their future. So to conclude, we can't exactly say who's gonna inherit Elon Musk's fortune, but we can see the effort he's made to concentrate wealth and control in his companies. That structure helped him become the richest man on earth, the first trillionaire, despite multiple divorces and having such a big family. But the same structure that concentrates control could also become unstable once he's not the one in charge anymore. Regardless to what happens to Elon Musk's fortune, the point is broader here. Inheritance, family dynamics, family economics play a huge role in wealth creation and preservation. Treating them as just drama completely misses the point. We've seen that one of the strategies that wealthy individuals use is to structure marriages so that they can live with all the benefits. The financial benefits, the money, but also the social benefits. You know, the ability to be a popular media figure, a pro-natalist, a guy who works 80 plus hours a week. All those things help him build his aura. Now, I don't want to leave the video with the impression that Elon Musk screwed all his wives and the women in his life. Some did negotiate a piece of the cake, and honestly, good for them. But telling the story of Elon Musk, the entrepreneur, the billionaire, without looking at his family, at his relationships, to me, misses a big part of the picture. And that's why I wanted to make this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, don't forget to leave a like, to subscribe to the channel, to support it on Patreon. We have a lovely Patreon where I put monthly media roundup videos, where we have a Discord chat, lovely little community. You get early access to the videos, ad-free, all that good stuff. I'll put a link in the description. Big thank you as well to our sponsor, Saily. So if you want to check it out, download Saily using the link below and use code ALICE at checkout to get 15% off your first data plan. Naturally, I want to say a big thank you to my patrons and a special thank to top tier patrons. Being attacked by nature. By the way, I got increasingly red throughout this video because it is very warm, and I also had to fit a little interview in between because your girl is busy. But anyway, let's switch to the small camera for the patrons. Hello there, thank you to my patrons: Malte, I'm literally a fork, Ahmed, Sibev, Jose Bailey, Nofo, Fred, Hongxing Wang, Paul-Louis Agenot, Patrick Button, Jeff Lee, Taya Matin, Nick, Brandon, James Ojwal, Patrick, Boris, Ria, Corrigi, Tristan, Christopher, Jan, Donage, Alex, Christopher France, Manuel, and Perry. And thank you to the other ones who prefer to stay anonymous. That's it for me, that's it for today. I'll see you very soon. Salut!